guys, it's Crunch Time Convos here, and we're back at you guys with another video. In this video, we're going to be recapping the recent trades and the recent draft. We're going to give our opinions, our thoughts on the trades and the draft choices. And if you guys enjoyed the video, then like it, subscribe, comment, tell us what we should do next, and we hope you guys enjoy. First up, let's talk about the CP3 trade, because I think that's probably the biggest one. So Chris Paul was moved to the Phoenix Suns in exchange for Ricky Rubio, Kelly Oubre, Jalen Lecque, Ty Jerome, and a 2022 protected first. For Phoenix, I think it's a pretty good move. They finally have some playoff hope after they went 8-0 in the bubble, but they missed the playoffs, but they had hope, and now they have CP3, and I think he definitely adds a different dimension, kind of complexity to their offense that I think can help them make at the best a 5th or 6th seed. He can definitely help DeAndre Ayton in the pick and roll. CP3 is one of the best ball handlers in NBA history, so he can definitely help DeAndre Ayton master being like a Karl Malone, and he can definitely help Devin Booker with his playmaking, his passing. Obviously, Chris Paul is one of the greatest passers of all time as well. So for Phoenix, I think it's a pretty good move. They didn't give up much. Really, the only asset they gave up was the 2022 first, because OKC traded Rubio, we traded Oubre. Lecque and Jerome are probably going to be bench warmers or cut. So I don't think Phoenix gave up too much. They have playoff legitimacy for the next 2 years, and I think that's worth it. Their fan base finally has hope. They're finally gonna have fans in the stand. And then for OKC, we just keep acquiring draft capital. I wish we would have kept Oubre, but obviously he got traded for another first-round pick. I think Lecque has potential. I know he has ridiculous bounce, but other than that, yeah, I think this trade is pretty good for both sides. I give it a B+ or an A for both sides. Next up, we have the Jrue Holiday trade to the Milwaukee Bucks, in which the Bucks acquired Jrue Holiday in exchange for George Hill, Eric Bledsoe, 3 first-round picks, and 2 pick swaps. So right off the bat, it looks like Milwaukee gave up a lot in terms of draft capital. 3 first-round picks and 2 pick swaps. That's reminiscent of the Paul George trade, and we all know how that worked out so far. Honestly, I think it's worth it. Jrue Holiday is the kind of guy who can definitely help Giannis win. He can affect the game off the ball. He's a pretty good shooter, and he's an amazing defender. He doesn't need the ball in his hands to change the game, which allows Giannis to have the ball in his hands. I think he's an upgrade, a tremendous upgrade from Eric Bledsoe. Eric Bledsoe's terrible. Like, there were legitimate games where he was out there playing like a 5th grader. Eric Bledsoe's terrible. George Hill, you're not mad at that because he's getting old anyway. You get an upgrade from Jrue Holiday, so you're not mad at that. The 3 firsts, if Giannis stays, and he most likely will, considering they just gave up half the draft assets for Jrue Holiday. If Giannis stays, I think those first-round picks are going to be worth nothing. They're going to be like 25 and up anyway. The pick swaps, they're not going to really mean anything because Milwaukee's probably going to be better than the Pelicans anyway. From face value, it looks like they gave up a lot, but really they didn't. As long as you can keep Giannis happy and you can keep this core intact, I think you have to give up anything you can. This is arguably the greatest Milwaukee team in the history of the franchise, and they have arguably the greatest player in the history of the franchise. So you have to do everything you can to keep him happy and this team intact, and if that means giving up your entire future in exchange for a chip or 2, I'd do it in a heartbeat. And for the Pelicans, you get a bunch of draft capital. Bledsoe and George Hill, they don't really matter. If I was the Pelicans, I'd probably trade them anyway. But the first-round picks and the pick swaps, you're just acquiring assets. You can trade them in the future for something, or you can keep them and try to get like draft sleepers later in the first round. So the Pelicans definitely have a bright future, and this for sure adds to it. So for Milwaukee, I give this an A. For the Pelicans, I also give this like a B+ or an A. Both teams addressed needs, and both teams put themselves in a position where they can win championships, whether that's now or in the future. So third, we have Dennis Schroeder getting traded to the LA Lakers for Danny Green in the 28th pick. Right off the bat, it looks like OKC got finessed. Dennis Schroeder, who definitely should have won 6th Man of the Year, at face value isn't just worth Danny Green in the 28th 28th pick, but he's on an expiring deal, so I guess Sam Presti wanted to get as much value out of him as possible because he was most likely going to leave. We got Danny Green, who we later flipped to Philly for another first round pick, and then we got that 28th pick that we used in a package to acquire the 17th pick. Once again, for OKC, we're just stockpiling draft picks. We're going crazy with the draft picks. I think we have something like 17 or 18 first round picks within the next 5 or 6 years, and that's crazy. So we have enough draft capital to trade into the top 10 or top 5 every single year, and not to mention we're probably going to suck, so we're also going to be in the lottery ourselves. So OKC has an amazing future. Definitely going to draft at least a few all-stars within the next few drafts, and pair those with SGA, we have a really bright future. For the Lakers, I love this trade because you get off the bench help. You get off the bench playmaking, off the bench scoring, playmaking, creating with Dennis Schroeder that you didn't have before. Like, the Lakers won the chip and they didn't even have that kind of bench scoring guy. They had Danny Green, Alex Caruso, Kuzma, but they didn't have it. They weren't that X Factor kind of guy like Dennis Schroeder is. Dennis Schroeder can get you a bucket whenever he wants. Dennis Schroeder can play make. He can throw alley-oops to Anthony Davis. You can pick and roll with Anthony Davis. He's a shot creator. His mid-range is off the charts. So I think LA definitely gets a lot scarier with this trade. They get help for LeBron James, so whenever he gets tired or he can't play make to the ability that he has so far in his career, Dennis Schroeder can definitely jump in and he can definitely help them without skipping a beat. So all in all, I give this trade an A+ for LA. You get one of the best bench scorers in exchange for basically peanuts. And then for OKC, I give it a B+. You just stockpile draft picks, same old for Sam Presti. So next up, Robert Covington was traded to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for Trevor Ariza and 2 first-round picks. First off, I think this is probably the most underrated, but probably the best trade out of these for Portland. Automatically off the bat for Portland, I give this an A+++. Portland, they needed defense and they needed shooting. When you look back at that 2019 Portland Trailblazers team that made it to the conference finals, they had great perimeter defenders like Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless, and that's what propelled them to that Western Conference final. And this year, they had tremendous offense, but they had almost no defense. And Robert Covington is one of the best perimeter defenders and inside defenders in the league today. So getting a great defender who can also help you on offense, I think Portland clearly won this trade. I think they're going to be a lot scarier next year, and they're definitely going to be legitimate contenders. They can be a top 4 or 3 seed. As long as you have Lillard, CJ, Nurkic, I think that core will definitely get you at least to the 2nd or 3rd round. Portland, amazing job, A+. And then for Houston, they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Teams know that they want to blow it up, so they're kind of undercutting them. Ariza, I think they traded him to the Pistons for another first-round pick, and then the 2 firsts, they're probably going to be late first-round picks anyway. And I think one of them they used in the Ariza package to acquire another first-round pick. Yeah, for Houston, I give it a C+. Covington, I think they definitely undervalued him, but it's not really their fault. I think he's definitely worth more than this. As mentioned before, Danny Green and Terrence Ferguson were traded to the Philadelphia 76ers for Al Horford, a 1st and a 2nd. So once again, OKC, just keep on stockpiling draft picks. We have to take on Horford's terrible contract, but honestly, we're not going to be good for a solid 3-4 years until after that contract runs out. So I don't think that really matters. And we get that 1st, that 2nd, even more draft capital. Philly gets Danny Green and Terrence Ferguson, which I think is a pretty good fit. Danny Green can definitely help them with their shooting struggles. Obviously, as you know, Philly has one of the worst floor spacing rosters in the entire league. So I think he can definitely help them be more legitimate contenders and be better floor spacers. And Terrence Ferguson, he's a young guy. He has potential, but I don't know, in OKC, every single game I watched him, he either went like 0 for 10 from the 3-point line or he fouled out within like the first 5 minutes. I don't know. He's an interesting guy. I think he has hops and he has a decent 3-pointer, but I don't know. hopefully he can become something in Philly. Next up, Ricky Rubio, the 25th pick and the 28th pick were traded from OKC to Minnesota in exchange for the 17th pick. Minnesota just getting more and more young talent with that 25th and 28th pick. They get Rubio, who can be a bench scorer and who can also mentor their young guards like D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards. And OKC got that 17th pick, which they used to draft Alexei. I can't say his last name, but he's a European guy. He has talent. He just needs to put on some weight. He's a few years from being a legitimate contributor, but obviously OKC, that fits our timeline. This trade is pretty good for both sides. Next up, there was a 3-team deal involving the Nets, Clippers, and Detroit Pistons, in which the Clippers got Luke Kennard, the Nets got Landry Shamet, and the Pistons got the 19th pick. The Nets, they're just acquiring shooters to put around Kyrie and KD. I like this move for them. They definitely helped build up their roster better. Now they definitely have a more contending type roster, more and more shooting. Shamet's pretty good. I like him. The Clippers get Luke Kennard, who is a pretty good shooter and a pretty decent playmaker. He can shoot off the dribble. He can shoot off the catch. And all you had to give up was Shamet. And I think Luke Kennard is better than Shamet. He's more all-around player than Shamet. So for the Clippers, I think this is worth it for an all-out push for this year. And then Pistons acquire the 19th pick. Pistons, they're in a full-on rebuild. They suck. They need as many young, talented players as they can. And I think they selected Sadiq Bey with this pick. I'm not sure, but if they did, he's definitely a guy who can help them in their rebuild. He's a great shooter. He has a lot of offensive and defensive potential. Pistons, I like this trade for them too. And then lastly, we have Josh Richardson and the 36th pick going from Philly to Dallas in exchange for Seth Curry. So Philly, once again, I'm pretty sure they're probably trying to put as many shooters around Simmons and Embiid as possible, trying to bring them back to that 2018 team that went pretty far. Curry, I think he can definitely help them floor space. He's a great shooter. He's a decent playmaker, but he's mostly a shooter. Josh Richardson, you would like to keep him. He's definitely a alright 3-point shooter, and he's a great defender. He's a competent scorer. The Mavs definitely won this trade. I think Josh Richardson, he's very underpaid, so he's on a great contract, and he's a really good player. He's not gonna hog the ball. He can affect the game off the ball. I love this trade for Dallas. It's obvious they're trying to contend this year. They're bringing in guys who can help them now.
Anthony, we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA draft and what I saw from a fan's perspective. The Minnesota Timberwolves got a really good player in Anthony Edwards. You know, if you listen a little bit to his pre-draft interviews, you would think this guy definitely doesn't really care to play basketball. And I couldn't blame you for thinking that. He had a lot of weird things to say about the game of basketball, which I'm surprised a lot of teams didn't talk about. But other than that, the way he plays, he is a baller. He's a hooper. I think he's going to be a very good player to have around Cat and D'Lo. You know, he's a good defender. He has a lot of defensive potential, in my opinion. He could be a big shot maker for them, maybe within the next 2 years or so. I think he fits in perfectly with them. And you have the Golden State Warriors. We found out that Klay Thompson has a torn Achilles, which wasn't exactly something we were all expecting to happen. It's unfortunate. You know, although I'm not exactly a fan of the Warriors, never really cared for them, I'm a big fan of Klay Thompson. I'm a big fan of Steph. I'm a big fan of Draymond. I like those guys. So, personally seeing Klay, a very likable guy, go off and injury like that, it sucks. It really does suck. And you can only wish for the best for him. You know, them getting James Wiseman means that he probably expected to get drafted to be around a third piece in the team, third option or fourth option. But now he has to probably take up that second option, because I can't imagine the Warriors having success with Draymond as their second option. He's not a scorer anymore. You know, he proved to the NBA last year that he's not capable of a lot of the things that we thought he can be capable of. But if a lot of people don't understand about Draymond isn't a player that you put on a team and say, you go carry this team. I feel like most basketball fans that watch the game from a logical point of view, we're well aware of that. You're well aware that Draymond isn't somebody who's going to lead a team to the playoffs, but he's somebody who can thrive, and I mean extremely thrive, when he's playing with other stars around him. So with Steph playing this year, Draymond will probably look at least somewhat close to his all-star self. But now that you have James Wiseman here, who can get in the paint, big guy in the paint, help Steph, I guess relieve some pressure off of Steph. But I think for Golden State, Stephen Curry is going to have a ridiculous year for him to even be a threat to any team in the Western Conference, especially with teams like the Lakers, Clippers, even the Phoenix Suns, the Rockets, if they get their act together. Dallas, I think, is an underrated team. The Warriors are going to have to get their act together. Steph is going to have to just go off, which he's more than capable of, at least in my opinion he is. And yeah, for the Warriors, they have a lot to think about for this next season. And you have Charlotte Hornets. I think the Charlotte Hornets did a good job picking LaMelo Ball. I like LaMelo Ball. I like him as a player. You're going to have a lot of drama around with his father and all that. But that, again, like I've always been saying, you got to take the bad with the good. In this case, the good could be really, really, really good. I like that idea of them getting LaMelo Ball. I think if he can play in this team, obviously they're probably not making the playoffs or anything. He can thrive. He can shoot the ball. He can play make whenever he wants to, hopefully develop into a star. And the Bulls drafting Patrick Williams. I mean, I heard a lot of people talk about Patrick Williams, and I had never, ever heard of him. I'm a big fan. I study the game from close lens, but I had never heard of Patrick Williams prior to, the draft. I assume he's going to be a good player because I don't think Chicago, with their new management, would have drafted a player with the 4th overall pick that they didn't really care about. Obviously, there's something that they see in this kid. And I think that if they saw something, he should achieve that. I think he's not going in with a lot of pressure, which should hopefully give him the mental capacity to do what he has to do. He's not being pushed to be this or that. He's going in here with one mindset, prove people wrong. And then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers. Isaac Okoro, I think, is one of the best wing defenders in the entire draft. I think he definitely fits with Cleveland, but I do think Cleveland has to decide what they're going to do with the Collins, Sexton, and Darius Garland situation. You have two ball-dominant guards on the same team. Confuses me. They're both really good players, and yes, they're both potential. Both of them have really high potential. But let's be honest, it doesn't make any sense to have two of those guys on the same team. But I think with Isaac Okoro, he's a really good defender. He could develop his offensive game to something even bigger, and he's still pretty good on offense. So if he can start to develop that even more, the Cleveland Cavaliers could have a really good star on their hands. Now, I like what the Hawks did. I like Onyeka Okongwu, but it confuses me. Because now you have another big man with John Collins and Clint Capella. Clint Capella isn't on some small contract. He's not on a small contract. You can say put him on the bench. I personally don't get it. Why? I guess maybe they're gonna trade him. I don't know. He's getting paid about $18 million a year, and I can't imagine him coming off the bench. But maybe again, if they can find a good deal for him, trade him, then just start Onyeka Okongwu with John Collins, you could have a really good team. I think, the defense, at least those two, John Collins and Onyeka Okongwu, could really be elite if they can work on that a bit more. John Collins is he can space the floor really well. A lot of people don't know because how many people really watch Atlanta Hawks games? Not that many people. But I'm also somebody who likes watching guys like that. I like watching young players, especially I love Trae Young's game. I love watching him play. Number 7, you have the Detroit Pistons. As of right now, I am very irritated with the Detroit Pistons organization. What they're doing, but whatever. They drafted Killian Hayes, and I like Killian Hayes. I think he's a good guard. He's a little crafty guy who can get into the paint. He might be able to just develop into something big, especially now that they're holding Derrick Rose hostage there. Maybe he can give him some veteran tips, help him develop something. I'm not a Pistons fan by any means. I don't really care for the Detroit Pistons, but Derrick Rose is my favorite player. Seeing him on the Pistons rotting at this point, it's yikes. The Pistons are trying to rebuild, and you have Derrick Rose and Blake Griffin on there enjoying the view, I guess. Those are two guys who could be contributing to something so much bigger, but they're not. I don't know what that's all about. Hopefully that changes within the next couple of days. And then you have the Knicks, who I think right now people need to give a round of applause to. The New York Knicks. How about the New York Knicks? The New York Knicks. Obi Toppin. I mean, I like that pick. The New York Knicks have shocked a lot of people so far this offseason. They made a lot of good moves. They've freed up a lot of space. A lot of young players, a lot of good players they have on their team now. If they can continue to do this, the Knicks could well on see a playoff run within the next at least 5 years. I like what they're doing. I really do like what they're doing. And the Wizards are lucky that they got able to get Denny. I mean, Denny's a really good player. I'm surprised he went so low, but I guess it makes sense. You look at it. I thought he was going to go to Chicago, really, but Washington, I guess that works. He could fit over there. I like what he's doing. I like what he brings. That European style of basketball, which was just high IQ basketball for the most part. He's a smart player, and he can dominate. Jalen Smith for the Suns, I mean, I don't have much to say about that or the Spurs, but I do like what the Kings did with drafting Tyrese Halliburton. You know, I've been watching him play 2K on Twitch. I've been watching him play. I think he's a really good player. You know, I think he's a good player. He's a good defender. He could fit well in that offense. You know, De'Aaron Fox, as I'm speaking, has got a max deal with, Sacramento. That means he's at least locked up for the next 5 years unless there's a trade within the next 5 years. I like that. You know, I think he's a good fit. You just have to figure out what's going to happen with Buddy Hield. Now, is Buddy Hield going to stay as Sacramento King, or is he going to be traded? We don't know. We really don't know. And I think the last person I want to talk about is Kira Lewis. I like Kira Lewis. I said in my other video, I think these are very fast players, a very good guard. Now, how is he going to fit in a team with Lonzo Ball? How is that going to work? I don't know personally. And the only other person I want to talk about who I think is a steal, well, I think the Denver Nuggets got themselves a good steal in RJ Hampton. I like RJ Hampton's game. I also like how the Magic were able to get Cole Anthony. That's a good player. The Magic have really needed a good point guard for the last couple of years. J.J. Augustine looks like he's on the way out. I personally think that, Cole Anthony is a very good player. A lot of people started to dislike him because of his inefficiency towards the end of his year. But I think that if he's put in a good situation like Orlando, he can spark some potential.
Well, that's all, guys. We hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and we hope you guys have a nice day.